I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular council meeting for Monday, May the 8th. I'd like to remind everybody and meeting participants that the meeting will be recorded for public access and broadcast. With that, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and can I have a motion for adoption of the agenda, please? By Councillor Blina, seconded by Councillor Gallant. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. I'll remind everyone that there's conflict of interest forms in the middle of the table. If you need to fill one out, please do so. With that, can I have an adoption of the minutes from the regular council meeting from April the 11th, 2023?
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Thorne,
Seconded.
seconded by Councillor Gallant. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Can I have a motion for the committee of the whole meeting from April the 24th, 2023? So moved by Councillor Oblinas, seconded by Councillor Dykstra. Any questions to the motion? No questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Are there any questions to the consent agenda items? There's no questions. Can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda items? Moved by Councillor Thorne, seconded by Councillor Dykstra. All in. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Contrary minded, and the motion is carried. With that, we'll move on to public and administrative presentations. Item number 1, a rezoning proposal for bid number 00954404. With that, we'll call Lori Bickford forward from the Southeast Regional Service Commission. Welcome, Lori, to the meeting. Always a pleasure to have you here. I'm sure you were supporting the local economy before the meeting started.
Sure was. It was
Thank
a
you.
tough choice this time, but. So I do want to point out, first going off, that in the preliminary report that shows up in your agenda, it actually references the applicant as Sean Dempsey. There's a glitch obviously going on in our report. So Sean Dempsey did make the application, but he is a lawyer acting on part of Actus Law for the applicant. So I should have actually said Actus Law. And the property owner should have been down as a numbered company 604-408 NB Limited.
Thank you.
Do you? So the application that is before you is to rezone a property. It's on the corner of Fredericton Road and Homestead Road. So just outside the former village boundaries. So I showed, the image I'm showing here shows you the two zones that we have between the new area that you've incorporated, which is that area covered under the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan. So the subject property is highlighted in a red outer line, and it is a rural area zone at present time. The properties that you see next to it, the bright purple being an industrial zone that's already been attached as part of the municipal zoning from under your municipal bylaw. So these two bylaws are two separate bylaws, but we're talking very close to each other. So the application itself is to rezone the property from rural area to commercial industrial, and that's the zone that's included in that Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan. So the purpose is to permit a trucking depot. There's some general office administration work that goes along with it, maintenance and repair of the vehicles, as well as some washing and cleaning of the trucks and trailers on the property.
Just out of curiosity, was that not the purpose of the building prior to this zoning?
I should bring that up. So in 2012, there was actually no zoning in that particular area outside municipal boundaries.
Yeah.
So they did obtain a trucking depot and warehouse permit to build that structure, and that activity is pretty much happening today. The problem is when we adopted the bylaw, that Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan in 2022, the property wasn't zoned the industrial commercial zoning that it probably should have had. I've consulted with the rest of the staff that were participating in that particular plan. They're of the opinion that it wasn't intentionally zoned that way as rural, because what you could have done is intentionally zone a rural area to try to phase it out, which is the non-conforming aspect. As of today, they have full non-conforming rights to continue that operation at that particular location. However, if they ever tried to get into expanding, or if they ever tried to change slightly, they wouldn't be granted that full
So,
set of range.
so as such, they'd be continually, they would be grandfathered based on the previous,
Exactly, because it was a legal permit that was
permit they
in,
were issued.
and it was actively
So they're not
occurring
conforming
there.
because they're.
What the rezoning does in this particular case is allow those uses as of right under the proper zoning. And that would allow them, if they had to do any expansions to the building, if they wanted to do any changes, I don't believe there's washing of vehicles right now that's going on. So those things would now be allowed if this rezoning is successful to go through.
Is
It's
there-
not an uncommon practice
Yeah.
when a situation like this should arise, that they would prefer to have it as a legal right versus relying on non-conforming.
Thank you.
As we've already said, it's very similar to the uses that are already occurring today. This will just kind of legitimize it and legalize it in that process if council so chooses. The property does already abut the industrial zones, as I said, in the Salisbury municipal plan. And I did pull out, reference to a municipal plan policy that talks about, back when we developed that plan in 2020, I believe it was. The policy actually references expanding that industrial area, and that council would seek to look at that option in the future. We weren't ready in 2020, but there was that general acknowledgement that, that is where we would want to focus industrial activity within the village. So we can move on to the next slide. So essentially what council's role tonight is, if you're interested in considering this rezoning request, you would pass a resolution. And the resolution's purpose is to start the public engagement process of changing, the potential to change the zone. Does not guarantee that you're gonna change the zone. That never happens until you have 3 successful readings of a bylaw. But what it does do is it would direct staff to prepare the draft bylaw for the rezoning amendment, sets the public hearing date for June 12th, which is your regular council meeting. And then it would also, it requests the views of the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee. I've tentatively set that date for June 28th. But that is a requirement of council before they do any rezoning or adoption of any planning related bylaw, to seek the views of that committee. So that kind of concludes my fast overview.
Want us to make a motion first before we ask questions?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
On page 43 of the package is the full,
The whole thing?
the full thing.
I'll move whereas council has considered an application from Actus Law to amend the Westmoreland Albert Planning Area Regulation 21 WAP 06900 by rezoning the property known as PID 00954404 from the rural area zone to the commercial industrial zone to permit the operation of a trucking depot with offices, warehousing, maintenance, repairs, and washing area for trucks. Be it resolved that the council of the town of Salisbury directs that the appropriate bylaw be prepared to amend the Westmoreland Albert Planning Area Regulation 21 WAP 06900 as it pertains to the rezoning. That the proposed bylaw be referred to the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee for their reviews. That the notice of intention requirements of the Community Planning Act be fulfilled with respect to the proposed rezoning, and sets the council meeting of June 12, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers at the municipal office, 56 Douglas Street, Salisbury, New Brunswick, as the date, time, and place for the public hearing of consideration of objections to the proposed bylaw.
So moved by Councilor Colwell, seconded by Councilor Blinis. Questions to the motion?
So this will also allow, if they decide to resell, that it can be used for what it's currently being used for, as an example.
Exactly.
Because if we don't move this forward or propose to move it forward, they can't sell it for it like an industrial property.
Yeah, they couldn't sell it, they couldn't,
Right.
sorry, they could, because the non-conforming rights would be there, but the
Change.
problem is, it's.
Yeah, the permit still exists.
Yeah.
They just don't, they couldn't change what they're
Yeah,
offering.
operate as
Yeah,
they're
and if it
operating
is
today.
continued for 11 months, then they have the potential to lose the
Okay.
non-conforming rights.
I just wanted to clarify that for everybody.
Is there any issues with the fact that potentially crossed off in food, or is there anything in respect to food and zoning, or is that just commercial, industrial carries all that?
Not necessarily as far as zoning goes. However, I will say that part of the resolution is if you guys are entertaining this rezoning, I automatically have to circulate it to numerous provincial departments for their comments. So there could be comments that come back. There's some anticipated ones would be water usage.
That was a question I had, like if we're all concerned about water up in that area and they specifically indicate in here, water washing. Like what are everybody's concerns about that? I mean, we know we need to, it does need to be rezoned. But should we not also be looking at if anyone is going to be promoting washing of tractors? There needs to be some sort of regulations in there that they have to recycle, reuse that water like they do in other wash, electronic wash bases, that it's not just continual water out into the ground and absorbing and not recapturing because I mean, we're all talking about water's a huge.
Yeah,
problem.
I guess it's a great question to find out, is it gonna be a challenge for the amount of water that they're gonna use?
Well, just because it's specifically in there, like there obviously is a plan of some sort, an underlying goal
Yeah.
somewhere down the road.
I think Lori, that might have been brought up, I think. I think we've touched on this.
So I mean,
I feel like I had my back to you, so.
it is one of those things that when the application came forward, it did raise a concern because of the fact that there is no municipal water services.
Right, and we're having.
So, but I'm not able to go out and seek comments from other departments until really I get the go ahead from council that they're considering it. But I've already reached out to, environment to kind of ask and pose a question, and they definitely want to look at it and review it. So they're on standby that if you guys should pass this, they're committed to giving me their comments back, fairly quickly. It does have the potential to trigger an environmental impact assessment if they get into that. And they had indicated to me, not necessarily on this proposal because they don't know all the details of it yet, but they have indicated that other car washes, they have required environmental impact assessments as part of that. So if you did the rezoning and it came back that an environmental impact assessment said they can't do that, or they had to put X, Y, and Z in place, then they would have to comply with that. Your zoning amendment would not trump any provincial regulation out there that they require those.
Good question. Phyllis.
Councilor Williams?
Are there any other areas around there that we should be considering at the same time for rezoning?
Yes.
Yeah.
We also talked about.
We'll talk about this too, because this is one of these ones that it's so close to that border. And it's, from a zoning perspective, makes logical sense to create, especially with that policy in there that already talks about extending industrial in that area. The challenge is right now, it's not an easy job to just take the two bylaws and stick them together and say, okay, here's a new bylaw. I have to cross-reference, policies and everything to make sure there's no conflicts. But I do anticipate that that will be something that if we can, when I have the ability to sit down and we're not in a time-sensitive situation of an actual application, that I would see that being part of, a review of the amalgamating of the two bylaws together, for sure.
So it's kind of handle them piecemeal for now until we can review our municipal plan.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
There's some too on that one specifically, just because there's some, like this one has access, there's a current use. There's others where there's like no road, for example. And so in the outside areas right now, that's DTI, it has to do with subdivision plan, so on and so forth. But I would suspect based on updates from them and through the commission that there are updates that are imminent to that effect. Because DTI would rather the municipality do those subdivision plans. Our specs are more stringent, so on and so forth. So I do know that us and another municipality also in the southeast had asked the question, and then some people in Franklin realized that was a question that was going to be asked regularly. So my understanding, there's an update that's imminent, which will then will be able, like it will go through the commission so that they can say, they can have an idea what that will look like, because we could rezone it, but there's no sense rezoning it if the land's not usable. So there's there's many pieces of the puzzle, I think, with these ones.
And one of the things that you'll see, not necessarily related to this, but kind of on that topic, is we are working on a template of a subdivision bylaw for you. So that it would address that issue of municipal controlled roads versus roads that are still under Department of Transportation. That's still a couple months away, but that'll probably happen first before we even get into a time when we can amalgamate the two bylaws together.
Just a quick question on rezoning specifically in that area. If there was the expansion of the commercial industrial zone, specifically relating to some of the agricultural land in that area, what does that actually do if you were to zone some of the agricultural area commercial industrial? Does that then prohibit agricultural use? Or is that just?
Usually not in those situations, because I would suggest we would be, if we were taking some of that agricultural land, we're gonna write in there that it's a permitted use until
It's not.
not anymore, because that's what it's traditionally been used. The other thing that's a bit of a challenge to just automatically going in and rezoning that is I have to contact, and as part of the changes that have happened under provincial rules, I have to contact all the departments. So agriculture will become a big key, part of the comments that are gonna come back, and they're gonna probably, I would dare say, have some issues with us, changing the zone or maybe the amount that you're trying to introduce. This one in particular, where it's not being used as agricultural activity, though, I don't see it going to Department of Agriculture at this
No.
time.
One of the other things too, that comes to my mind, based on previous experience, is that, and you maybe will answer this question for me, based on the comment, is that there may be some value of waiting before we determine what's gonna be rezoned based on applications for rezoning, rather than just rezoning something commercial, industrial, because then it may open it up to industries or other areas that we may not be crazy about going into those areas in the first place. It'd be a lot more difficult to have any objections either from council or residents if it's already a commercial zone.
I mean, certainly when we get into amalgamating the two together, we don't want to be in a situation that happened with this particular property where we made a use non-conforming.
Right.
So that's why it's not a simple, just stick the two bylaws together.
Right.
We want to do a better review to make sure that we haven't created more of those conflicts out there. This particular one, though, I will say that because of its location of where it is, and it's so close, it's not like you're doing some spot rezoning out in the middle of
Right.
nowhere. And your policies right now actually talk about even encouraging these to not continue down the road in the future, but to focus all industrial activity up into that industrial area. So this one, on the scale of things, is my personal opinion, is it's not gonna cause the same kind of disruption as if we were way outside the former village boundaries and somebody was trying to do a level of industrial activity.
So one other question, which I'm pretty sure I know the answer to, but I want to make it public since we're at a meeting. So if you do get a request from a landowner for rezoning in what is now the town of Salisbury, that request would have to come to us first for approval?
So they
Like
all,
right now.
they all have this exact same process.
Right.
So they come before council, council makes an initial decision whether they want to consider it. And you can either choose to not consider it at all. Or you can choose to consider it, let the public hearing or public process play out, and then make your decision at the end. But council is the one that has, in any zoning matter, will be the
So there
determinant.
wouldn't be any situation where the province would say, well, within the town boundaries, we plan to rezone something.
No,
Now that we have a council that represents the whole boundaries,
Right.
that's part of their reason from, you probably know the planning side of things more, but that's part of the reason that one of their arguments is to.
Well, when, for those of us who are former LSDs, one of the questions that we often get, I know I do. What am I getting for being part of the town and my taxes going up, and there's lots of answers to that question. But one of the answers that should be of value to the residents outside of the village is that they now have more control of zoning than they previously did. And believe me.
The seat at this table.
Yeah, and believe me, as somebody who's born and raised in the greater Toronto area, I can tell you. If you're not careful, places that used to be real rural, may someday not be if you don't have control over them.
And I do say that that is the biggest and one of the best things that came out of municipal reform is the fact that people that were in those unincorporated areas, a rezoning application would come through and the decision was made in Fredericton as to whether it was approved or not. This way, now everything is incorporated with the exception of a few rural district areas. But that is now under local control. So they have a voice that's a local person that they can go to and a local council that's gonna make the decision.
Thank you.
Additional questions? No additional questions, all in favor of the motion? Contrary minded? Motion carried, thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, let's move on to item 7, reports and recommendations from committees and private meetings. Item 1, recommendations from the closed session, April 11th, 2023.
So, recommendation from the closed session, April the 11th. Background, it's regarding the purchase of roadway PID number 00817478. A little bit of background is the majority of Blakeney Road in Salisbury, despite being a municipal street that is maintained by the town, is actually on CN property. This has historically presented a challenge relating to having control to undertake municipal work without authorization from CN and can present challenges when municipal roads encroach on properties and other stakeholders. Do you want me to state the recommendation or just someone can do? So the recommendation is theirs.
I can move the recommendation that council authorize the clerk, treasurer, and the mayor to sign a purchase agreement with Canadian National Railways, CN Rail, to acquire approximately 475 meters total area, plus or minus 0.87 acres of property bearing PID 00817478, for a total purchase price of $20,000 plus taxes, surveyor's fees, and legal fees at the expense of the town.
So moved by Deputy Mayor Bannister, seconded by Councillor Delant. Questions to the motion?
I do have a quick question. Can you refresh me on where the funds were coming from for that? Where do we pull that?
The
from?
same, so there's planned work for, hopeful work for an area there, a couple of different projects. And part of that we had budgeted initially for permitting work with CN. And so purchase price is, slightly over the permitting fees on themselves, so there's a bucket of funds there. That's
Right.
under transportation, other is one of the municipal form lines.
I knew what it was. I just needed a refresher. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions?
Good job on the purchase price also.
Yeah.
That was an easy ask, actually, anyways, yeah.
If you don't ask, the answer's always no.
Good job.
Exactly.
Good recommendation too.
For way to repurpose the funds to our advantage.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
With that, no additional questions. All in favor of the motion? Very minded? Motion carried. Any additional items from that meeting, Austin?
Nothing from those, correct, yeah.
Okay, item number 2, recommendations. We give the whole meeting April the 24th, 2023.
So recommendations is ratification of the Salisbury Fire and Rescue Recruitment Policy. So as a background, as presented during the Committee of the Whole meeting on April 24th, 2023, the recruitment policy for the Salisbury Fire Rescue Department streamlines the recruitment policy and clarifies roles, responsibilities, and expectations relative to the recruitment and selection of members for the department.
I'll move that council approve the recruitment policy for the Salisbury Fire Rescue Department.
I'll second.
Moved by Councillor Dykstra, seconded by Councillor Colwell. Questions to the motion? No questions. All in favor? Reminded, motion carried.
So there's another item also, ratification of the Salisbury Fire and Rescue Attendance Policy. Again, as a background, as presented during the Committee of the Whole meeting on April 24th, 2023, the town has proposed an updated attendance policy to better reflect the current realities of the department.
Move the council approve the Salisbury Fire Rescue Attendance Policy.
Seconded. Moved by Councillor Tory, seconded by Councillor Albinus. Questions to the motion? No questions, all in favor? Minded, motion carried. Item number 8, reports from administration. Item number 1 under section 8, agreement for services, Johnston Architects.
So this one is, formalizes the RFP document, following an award on, April 11th, yeah, our last council meeting. So in essence, it formalizes the RFP into a formal agreement contract, that, stipulates the payment services, those sorts of things that were included in the RFP. And the kind of logistical elements like invoicing instructions, authorized individuals, what the contractor has to do if they suddenly lose all their staff, the town's opt-out clause, all those things that were in the RFP that formalizes it into a formal agreement, because essentially they submitted an agreement. The award was, or the contract, the services were awarded by council, but there was no agreement signed by both parties. So it takes the RFP and puts it into an agreement for professional services.
I move that council authorize the clerk/treasurer and the mayor to sign the agreement with Just Plus for a number of professional services as ordered in RFP SALS 2023-01 during the regular council meeting of April 11th, 2023.
So moved by Councillor Albinus, seconded by Deputy Bannister. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion, all in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried. Item number 2, contribution agreement, integrated bilateral agreement, IBA funding.
We're moving faster than I can scroll through the agenda package. So this one is an agreement between the province and the municipality under the IBA, so the Integrated Bilateral Agreement, which is the agreement between the province and the feds for infrastructure dollars. So the town's been made aware that an application that's been in for a couple of years has received approval, and as part of that, we're required to sign an agreement with RDC. And this is the logistical elements of that agreement. And so costs incurred can be incurred from the date of the letter, which is April 17th. So this is the formality to authorize signature. Staff has looked through it, and these are very standard for the IBA agreements. And so it reflects, with the exception of one title that we'll have corrected, the summary and the details reflect the application that was submitted. And because the costs in this world are very unpredictable, we had the opportunity in September to update costs for the application numbers, thankfully. And so those numbers reflect the September 2022 costs, which are much more recent than 2019, I think, or maybe 2020 when it was submitted initially. So there was a jump there because the overruns that may be incurred are up to the municipality, because the confirmation from the other levels of government are what they will provide. So it does give us a level of security there as well. And then from financing, it does come from the utility budget and not from the operational budget. And where this is, there are funds there for capital projects. There are some repairs that are being done currently that we're awaiting bills on, which may be a little bit higher than we hope. But there is a significant reserve there that will very much cover this. And so that would just be an additional motion at the end of the year if needed. We would try to keep it on the books as long as possible. But that's the summary. And then if there are other questions, we can dive into them after the motion.
Looking for a motion?
Looking for a motion, please, yes.
A motion that council authorize the mayor, chief administrative officer, and clerk treasurer to enter into an integrated bilateral agreement, contribution agreement for polishing, pond repairs, and affix the corporate seal accordingly.
Second it.
Deputy Mayor Bannister, seconded by Councillor Gallant. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried.
I'll add one thing just before I forget on that one. Council also hasn't had, because you were elected in November, hasn't had the opportunity to actually see for the new councilors, the polishing pond and that system. So that's on our docket. We talked about it to try to find a day where we can get you there so you can see the system, but also the work that will be done. And it will be very visible very quickly as to why this work needs to be done. Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad you were
sort of that last
I was
addition.
gonna ask where it was to get there.
Yeah, we'll bring you on a tour with Trevor, who can tell you all the ins and outs, because that will not be me that can do that.
Item number 3, award of engineering services, polishing pond stabilization. Number 4, multi-year grant.
No,
agreement.
it's a separate one.
Separate
Yeah,
one,
it
okay.
is, yeah. So we are looking for a motion on the engineering services
Okay.
for the project that was just approved. The reason being is under our financial management and procurement policy, I'm authorized to sign off on expenses up to 30,000. The engineering expenses for this project are expected to go over that. And so we solicited a proposal from EXP, and administration is recommending a sole source award for this project on the basis that EXP has completed the other 3 sections of the polishing pond that have been completed to date. And they were also the firm that was consulted throughout the application process for the purposes of costing. So they haven't done design work per se, but they've done the costing for it for this section, and have completed the other work on it. So our recommendation on the floor is to proceed with their proposal, which is a sole source, and it's over my thresholds. We are bringing it for council for approval. So it's a component and will be funded by the IBA contract. But similar to when that work goes out to tender, council will have to award that
Okay.
project as well. This is also over our threshold.
Can you read the motion, please?
I move that council authorize administration to retain EXP services for engineering and tendering professional services for the polishing pond berm stabilization project at fees that are estimated to be based on current cost estimates to be $50,800 plus HST.
Moved by Councillor Glant, second by Councillor Oblinas. Questions to the motion?
So that's 50,800, is that the total engineering and costs associated?
No,
Or is
that's
that
just the
engineering?
engineering. That's just the
To
engineering.
the berm?
The total costs are,
It's way more than that.
Environmental.
because they're gonna have to apply for a Wawa permit.
Yeah,
They'll have to do,
It's almost 400.
yeah, it's 382, I think, is what it is.
Just to be clear, this is for a berm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's expensive. It's expensive. But I can see if the cost, I'm just trying to look here for the breakdown. It's gonna be easier to go to the CRF. Here we go. Yeah, so the total in September of 2022 is 387,288 total project. That includes a percentage of engineering fees at that time, but they generally go based on percentage of total costs. So I can't remember exactly what it was in September of 2022.
Is there specialized materials associated with this, or is this literally just digging?
It's a little bit of not specialized materials, but specialized insight, including basically, especially with the causeway. We had a conversation before the meeting about an inquiry from a resident, and we're seeing in that area, and well, along the whole river, but in that area in particular, since the causeway opened, the direction of the river has shifted too. So they'll have to do more work to determine the work that they will do, because this is the berm, unlike the other berms, it's the berm that's immediately adjacent to the river. And so it has to be not only stabilized, but built in a way that will sustain future ice buildup or whatever it may be. This year we were lucky.
We lost significant amounts 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
and then again last year.
Yeah, because there was one year in particular that was quite damaging, so. And then they'll also do all of the tendering and the Wawa permits and all those things that will need to be done through the province and those approvals.
Additional questions to the motion? No additional questions? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Item number 4, multi-year grant agreement, Salisbury Farmers and Artisans Market.
So this is, again, another agreement for official, basically authorization for signature. It is, however, our first multi-year grant agreement. So for some context for the new counselors, this is a village subunit specific cost, because in the late summer of last year, the municipality was approached by RDC, who was funding through ACOA as well, projects at the barn, so at the farmers market on Main Street, requesting also a municipal contribution. So council at the time passed a motion to direct the facilitator to provide a 5,000 year grant annually over 3 years for a total of $15,000. and it was budgeted accordingly by the facilitator, so it was pulled out of the grant budget and made a village subunit specific expense where it was decided by the former council. So what this is not kind of authorizing an unbudgeted expense. It's basically formalizing the agreement before we provide the grant itself to make sure that it's clearly outlined and stipulated. And can answer any questions on the agreement itself or any of the conditions which were discussed last summer as well. And we will also use this multi-year grant agreement for future ones as well, just as a template to shift things around. So can answer questions for the motion.
Okay, someone read the motion, please.
I move that council approve the multi-year grant agreement between the town of Salisbury and the Salisbury Farmers and Artisans Market for the provision of a $5,000 annual grant for the next 3 years, insofar as the terms and conditions of the agreement are met by the recipient.
So moved by Councillor Molina, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bannister. Questions, motion? Dykstra?
Just a quick question. There's some talk about replacement and repair of the municipal infrastructure of the sidewalk and the frontage of the property. Would it also not be prudent to have some sort of a crosswalk across Route 106 in terms of the amount of the lack of parking associated with that facility that will become a problem?
So the sidewalk is because we want to make sure it's repaired so that we know that it's repaired and won't be at our expense.
Yep.
It was done last year, so that's why that's a condition. On the crosswalk itself, it's not necessarily covered in here. It would be an obligation of the town, I guess. However, it has been added to the contract for our paint liners, whatever you call them, for this year. We can't put any flashing crosswalk signs because it's a stopping intersection, so we have to consult VTI where it's a provincially regulated road. But they have advised that we can put like a striped crosswalk similar to what's at Fredericton Road and Main Street. So that will be there when they come out to do the line painting probably this month, but I don't want to commit to that. I know Trevor's been in communication with them and has added that to the list, and Farmers Market's been advised of that too.
Just seems like a good idea to get ahead of if there's any popularity there, the lack of parking,
Yeah.
it's all gonna be an issue.
Are we able to put any pedestrian sign at all, or just not a flashing one?
That's a good question, actually. I'll have to check. Whatever is at Fredericton Road, probably.
There's rules and regulations as to crosswalks, and one of them is to be exactly like the one up here.
Yeah.
Or it has to have the flashing lights, like the one at the other
Like
corner.
The issue is because it's a stop intersection, so they don't want people to see the crosswalk sign and not see the stop sign, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes
Close
sense.
together.
It would be
There's, like,
distracting.
Yeah,
We almost have the same thing across River Road.
across, that's what we're talking about. Yeah,
Right in front
I
of it.
thought we were, okay. I thought
that's what
we
you're
were-
talking about, right?
Yeah.
Where are you talking about? Sorry.
106,
Thinking once it's ready.
Oh, the opposite side.
yes.
Okay, so
Basically, the front doors of the barn.
the same thing that
Side doors of the barn.
that's
Right across the
on
road.
the other side of the intersection to move down. We can check on that one too, because that one will be easier, I would say, to have the sign
I see
side of
what you're
there.
talking
That's
about
what
going
it's from, like,
across.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because we've gotten
That's a good idea,
inquiries on
too.
that one too. Yeah, we can check on that one. I suspect it would have to be a little bit back just because of where Horseman Street is, but probably not an issue.
Well, there's the
Usually
corner of
there's so-
Horseman and
so
106.
many,
like a
like, the distance between so many and
Yeah,
all that
yeah.
stuff that you have to deal with as well.
We'll
It
get
just seems
back-
like
get
there's
back
going
on
to
that.
be traffic parking. If there's any popularity to it,
I'm glad we're doing River Road. So a lot of students.
Yes.
Crossing that road at
Yeah,
dinner time.
Yeah.
Just in general.
was hit crossing.
You were hit there?
A busy
Never-
intersection, very busy intersection, and the busier that our businesses have become,
yeah.
the more traffic will
the
be.
more traffic that's gonna be. there.
Absolutely.
So we'll get back on the other one too, but sorry, I thought you were talking about the different one entirely. My apologies. We did get questions on that one too, so we'll check on the.
I knew what you were talking about, I was confused, but.
Yeah, sorry, that's my fault. I just assumed that was top of mind and we got the okay for that, so.
To me,
We'll
it's to
check
get ahead of things before they become a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Best idea.
And any additional questions? No additional questions, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. With that, item number 9, bylaws, number 1 under section 9, bylaw number 5, respecting driveway culverts and entrances, third reading and enactment.
So during the regular council meeting of April 11th, 2023, town council gave first and second reading by title only of 3 municipal bylaws being considered. The first one, bylaw number 5, respecting driveway culverts and entrances. This bylaw updates the former Village of Salisbury bylaw number 33, driveway culverts and entrances, and also includes schedule in the bylaw to only apply to these geographical boundaries, since the town is not responsible for regulating culverts and driveways in the outside areas or former LSD. The purpose of the bylaws outlined is to outline the requirements that must be met when installing and maintaining driveway culverts and entrances. So pursuant to section 15.3 of the Local Governance Act, public notice was posted. Bylaws were made available for viewing during business hours, Monday to Friday here in the town office, as well as available online. Written objections were to be submitted for consideration to the clerk by email or in person prior to this possible third reading and enactment. There were no inquiries or objections received to the clerk's office for any of these bylaws. Although I did have someone in this morning that was asking a couple of questions, but again, no written objections or inquiries. So if council so wishes to proceed, motions can be made for the first one. Bylaw number 5.
I move council have the third reading and enactment of bylaw number 5, a bylaw respecting driveway culverts and entrances by title only. This bylaw comes into effect,
That's it.
That's all.
That's it.
oh,
So moved by Deputy Mayor Bannister, seconded by Councillor Delant. Questions to the motion?
What was the residents' questions for this one?
They were just asking about culverts and how much the prices were going up. And then the other one was about the sewer laterals and how, what's changing.
Good questions.
yeah, very.
Additional questions to the motion? No additional questions, all in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
So I will have third reading and enactment of bylaw number 5. First reading is third reading bylaw number 5, a bylaw respecting driveway culverts and entrances. This bylaw will come into effect once the third reading and enactment has been completed and the document is signed and sealed.
Item number 2, bylaw number.
Can I ask a procedural question?
Yeah.
Do we need to have a motion to authorize signing of the?
That's what that motion is.
Oh, that's
Third
what
reading
motion
and
is? Okay.
enactment. Yep.
Item number 2, bylaw number 6, respecting sewage and the collection of user charges for the sanitary sewerage system in Salisbury, third reading and enactment.
So this bylaw, again, as was the first one, was given first and second reading by title only at the April 11th meeting. This bylaw updates and combines the former Village of Salisbury bylaw number 34 respecting sewer rates and charges, and bylaw number 45, a bylaw relating to the user charges for sanitary sewer system of the Village of Salisbury. The purpose of this bylaw is to regulate the requirements for the maintenance and connection to the municipal sewerage system, as well as outline the jurisdictional and authority for the collection of annual user charges. This applies only to the serviceable boundaries within the former Village of Salisbury boundaries. Again, it was posted, notice posted, available during business hours here at the town hall and available online. And no inquiries other than the one this morning, or objections were received through the clerk's office.
Can we have Councillor read the motion, please?
I move that council have third reading and enactment of bylaw number 6, bylaw respecting sewerage and the collection of user charges for the sanitary sewerage system in Salisbury by title only.
Seconded by Councillor Glantz, seconded by Councillor Venus. Are there questions to the motion? All in favor of the motion? Contrary minded, motion carried.
So third reading and enactment of bylaw number 6, a bylaw respecting sewerage and collection of the user charges for the Salisbury sewerage system in Salisbury by Salisbury, period. Again, this bylaw comes into effect once the third reading and enactment has been completed and bylaws are signed and sealed.
Number 3, bylaw number 7, building bylaw, third reading and enactment.
So again, building bylaw was discussed, first and second reading was made in April 11th. This bylaw updates the former Village of Salisbury bylaw number 36, building bylaw, and also regulates the building permit fees for the outside areas The purpose of this bylaw is to determine the permitting requirements, application process, and fees for the full town, including both former village and former local service districts. Again, pursuant to section 15(3), the Local Governance Act, public notice was posted, bylaws were made available for viewing during business hours, Monday to Friday at the town hall, our town office, and available online. Written objections were to be submitted for consideration to the clerk by email or in person prior to this possible third reading and enactment. There is no inquiries or objections received through the clerk's office for this bylaw. And so if the council so wishes, they can proceed with a motion.
I move that council have third reading and enactment of bylaw number 7, a building bylaw by title only.
So moved by Councillor Dykstra, seconded by Councillor Bland. Any questions to the motion?
Just one question, just want to confirm, when we discussed this previously, it was my understanding that there was no change for the areas outside of the village. It was basically the same cost.
Permit fee, correct, yeah.
Okay.
It's bringing the former village up to the outside areas.
Okay.
Additional questions? With no additional questions, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
So third reading of bylaw number 7, a building bylaw by title only is bylaw number 7, a building bylaw. This bylaw comes into effect once the third reading enactment has been completed and has been signed and sealed and registered. So this one does have to go for registration. Technically, it's not actually valid until that stamp has been registered. So as soon as we hear that it's been registered, then that's when it comes into effect. And everything.
Any closed agenda items?
Nothing for this evening.
Nothing closed. So with that, we'll move to mayor and councillor statements and inquiries.
I'd just like to bring up how good of a job Public Works is doing out and about, and specifically Joe, you see him every time. He's just hard at it. It's lovely to see. Keep up with the work.
Cool, make sure they know that.
So I had a question. I know I've asked this question before, but I keep getting it over and over again from residents. Is there any type of schedule, plan, or indication from the province as to when and where and they might be looking at either filling in potholes or redoing roads or whatever that we can, have available for residents to refer to?
So potholes, I don't know. We can check on what their schedule is. The Capital Works, the 3-year plan is ahead. I haven't checked in the last little bit to see if they've updated it. They were at the time where they had to change it now and add the year where we just finished last year's construction season. So what I can do is check on that, and we'll check with the district office here to see what their plan is. Usually they know we're gonna be in this vicinity for a week and then we're gonna move here. So that I'm not sure. I don't think they generally give it to us, but they have a schedule, so.
They have it online. I've read it.
For potholes as well, like patching?
No, I don't think patching is
Just schedule a.
Road resurfacing.
Those are the capital ones.
Those are the capital
Yeah,
ones.
they need to update it.
Yeah, there's a lot of residents that are like, let's face it, anybody who drives around these days, you're not sure whether you got a flat tire or what. And we've got some pretty bad areas. And it's, I'm sure it's frustrating for us as well as the residents who are having to deal with it, to be able to say, we don't know, right? Like, and it'd be nice to know whether, first of all, it is planned, that someone knows we gotta go to this road, and secondly, give the residents some idea. Certainly gonna make it a lot easier than, and don't get me wrong, I think it's great that the residents keep following up. I would, doing the same thing. It's a little frustrating to get a note every month saying, okay, we still haven't seen them.
So having said that, is there any way that we can, as the council or the town of Salisbury, ask for some kind of a streamlined pothole requests or some kind of a way of expediting or at least notifying of problem areas to the DTI?
There is
It does exist.
it exists,
It
and that,
exists.
and, we've-
Phone call, and they've actually, I'm only gonna go by what our clerk's office has said, they seem to respond when incidents are put into that system. I'm not gonna say good or bad, but I've heard from the clerk's office that when they've directed residents to do that, that it's been acted on.
I mean, I haven't seen anybody filling any potholes anywhere.
But I think what I would say is I really like what was talked about here. I would recommend that the clerks through the district engineer, put a formal request in for if they can provide us a schedule of their work, so we can communicate that to the public. I think it's a very valid request that, we should be definitely asking for and then putting that pressure on. I'd also ask to follow up with Minister Carr just on, from their strategic plan, what is their ongoing plans?
And posting that link to residents so that,
I think that's a continual, because we've done it, but I think it's like everything, it gets buried, but I think we have to
Absolutely.
constantly be, same idea. I know specifically Councilor Vittori is getting inundated with a lot of requests. I know many of you are as well. I constantly get one on the Bailey Lake Bridge type of a thing. I got, 3 more today, just on the potholes that are on each side of it, because obviously they just fill it in and it just keeps getting eroded away. So at the end of the day, it's almost, a ticket each week that has to be.
it's the inundation requests here, but that should then therefore translate in inundating DTI with requests,
Absolutely.
so that the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
We've been doing that one so much that we're starting to rotate who submits them, so it's not the same person over.
The residents need to submit.
The residents need to as well, yeah, yeah.
Well, there's lots of
Yeah.
places where we have indicated what the process is for the residents. I'm sure there's a lot of them that still don't know, but when they do call, they're being referred specifically to those procedures.
And the email is, I just pulled it up here just so I can say it on the record too. I'll include it in council's Wednesday update, but it's transportmb@gmb.ca. The other thing that I'll add, just for the sake of saving them a call back, is be as descriptive as possible for location, because they do have a dispatch center in Fairfield that's answering to it. So we've mentioned like something just anecdotally, the bridge, the lead ups to the bridge need to be repaired on Route 106. Well, then they call and say which section of Route 106, because on their map, it's very long and it might not be someone that has gotten one of our many requests. So be as descriptive as possible. That's the email, and the number I'll include in council's update as well, but it's in the mail out, and it's be something that we'll continue to push. It is new too. They just launched it in January, I think, end of December, January.
So they want GPS tag potholes or what?
As long as it's descriptive, like we just said bridge on Route 106, and so when they pull up their assets, there's multiple of them.
Yeah.
And so they want to make sure, like if it's pothole between route and route around that area, that's okay. It's just, if we just say Route 106.
Like,
yeah,
oh,
this is the-
Parking Larson, right?
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Some sort of indicator.
I think the more we
Dispatch
can
for the whole
remind
province,
people,
so.
Right.
hopefully over time, it'll become natural that people will start to utilize that system, but, obviously it's putting a little bit of burden on our staff, which we can hopefully lessen. I just wanted to also give staff credit for the newsletter, the e-newsletter that I know we vocalized that, you know, internally, but I really, for the public, again, I met with the Horizon Action Committee, today, where we talked about the newsletter. They were very impressed with the idea of that. And, they're gonna be looking into it, again, get word out. There's obviously a health needs assessment being done in our area that we want to gather all of the criteria, the gaps, what's happening today. One of the biggest gaps in our area has been communication, not like any other rural areas in the province, but that is one that has a huge opportunity to help overcome some of the gaps that are taking place. So kudos to staff on that.
Thank you, Scott, hidden back behind camera view.
Yes. Fantastic.
And the other piece on the general inquiry line for DTI, they're really pushing it. They're even asking us for like crosswalk inquiries, for instance. We generally have a direct contact or kind of a more specific generic email for crosswalk specifically. They want us to funnel it through there because they're trying to also track all the inquiries that are coming into them. So they're pushing that big time. So we'll continue to submit our requests. So if a counselor is bringing something up to us, we're going to end up using that email. We're trying to tell residents, keep us in the loop too, just so we get a pulse on where some of the issues are, for when we have, meetings with the minister or with our provincial representatives. But the best way to get them actioned and get the potholes filled is through that phone number or email.
Another item
would be
for Councilor Dykstra, the Horizon Health Action Committee, food safety was talked about significantly. I would actually like to invite you to one of the future meetings to talk to them about that, and they could be,
Lovely.
I think it'd be good. Sorry.
It would be good if we could access that data somehow.
I
Get
asked,
us
they won't let us
something.
yet, but they said that they're still very new. in their system, so I doubt they'll make it open source per se, but I did say like, is there a way that we can get the reports for our area? And they said they're still too new to say yes or no, but they're willing to consider future improvements to it.
Really good point.
Yeah, that's good.
Have we, I'm just curious, have we made any sent any specific letters yet on some of the unsightly premise or complaints that we've received?
I got a call back this afternoon that will be brought forward to council, I would say, in the near future.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we followed up with it, and then I got a call this afternoon. Finally.
Good, thank you.
Additional statements or inquiries?
I'd like to
Sorry,
just-
Councilor Glenn.
On Saturday, I was able to attend the UMMB Zone 2 meeting with Deputy Mayor Bannister and Councillor Thorne. And really strongly encourage all council to try to make those, it's a great opportunity to collaborate with other municipalities in the area. A lot of great conversation.
I did send
Mhm.
Austin the schedule
Mhm.
for the future meetings, so if he I figured he would probably include it in his WAG
Yeah.
report.
That'd be good, yeah.
Yeah. It was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal meeting.
Well, thank you
There's so
for the
much
two of you for
information.
going. That was great for, that you were.
Yeah,
able to-
three, there was three of us.
Oh, you went.
Stephanie was there. as
Kathy was
well.
there too?
It was
I am
incredible.
everywhere.
The information was awesome.
I've gone
Um,
in the past and I think it's really good.
Oh, well, that's
And
good.
they're there for all of us and our residents.
Well, they're the
We
Union
posted
of New
the-
Brunswick for all the
It's very good
municipalities.
agenda.
Powerful group.
Brings a lot of people in the thing.
So on that, just to carry from Jason, there are several committees that they are looking for people to, they're looking for people to, to step up. One nice thing that I was happy to hear is that they're virtual. So I mean, it's, they're easy to work into your schedule.
Do you have a name or email?
I absolutely do, and I will forward it. I'll forward you Brad, because they're going directly to Brad.
Okay.
Brad Murphy?
Dan Murphy.
Dan Murphy,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
Dan Murphy. They're going directly to Dan Murphy. So I have his card, and maybe what I'll do, Austin, is I will scan it to you and you can include it in the
I
web.
have his contact info, so I'll put it
Okay,
in the,
perfect.
yeah.
Maybe it would be worth getting a list of what he has.
I
for
ha-
vacancies
I
and then-
actually have the list. I just want to read them to you because I did send the notes to all of you,
Mhm.
but they weren't listed in the notes. Like he listed them there.
Okay.
And in the minutes, they weren't in the minutes either. One of them that was really interesting for me, and I thought of Joe immediately, was the new committee that's gonna be formed, with SNB. So that's gonna be announced through the bill, and then they're gonna be looking for people to step up for that committee. And it basically is on reevaluating, reassessing
Yeah,
properties.
I got my hand up on that one already.
Yeah, well, as soon as they're announcing, like, oh, Joe, that has Joe's name all over it. And at the end of the meeting, I said to Jason, that has Joe's name all over
Yeah.
it. So that one is a big one, Joe.
So I will, as soon as I get his email,
Yes,
Oh,
sent him a
get him
message.
a message immediately. I would be very keen to be on that.
There's a finance committee, there's a municipal reform committee, there's a housing committee, which I've already submitted my name on because that's of interest and passion for me. Healthcare, a conference committee, a resolution committee, and a public safety committee. So those were the ones that he announced at the meeting that day.
It's great opportunities for us to get involved and,
Absolutely.
be part of a process if we can.
Yeah.
Rather than just having things done to us. If we can have some impact and influence, that would be great.
And UMB is generally the advocacy train for municipalities because they beat the drums that all the municipalities
I didn't
collectively.
realize that. Like, I went into this meeting obviously very green. I'm, only here since January. Everyone was so welcoming, like they were just, and they all went out of their way to make me feel comfortable as a new person and not knowing who I was. And it really was a tremendous experience. And yeah, I now understand they are our, the Union of Municipalities, which I really didn't understand that they were collaborating that well. And the communication that they have throughout that group is phenomenal. I mean, we're getting, we're getting lots of information back from them.
Yeah, the conference in the fall is worth attending too,
Mhm.
because you're
Yeah.
outside of just our zone.
Yes.
You're.
Talk about that earlier in,
Yeah, the plan is
Yeah, we're
to
already-
have
we're already
everybody
signed up
attend,
for it.
everybody who's
That's in-
available to attend.
Okay.
but, yeah,
That's
I'll
in
inc-
September,
Oc-
right?
October.
Oh,
October, I
October.
think.
Okay,
I'll include the dates in the WAG too, just so
Yeah.
we're talking about it now.
okay, good.
Unless they changed it again, but.
yeah, that's good, that's
Yeah.
what we can do.
Okay.
Make that, it's nice to look for those things.
On that note of the SMB, I had a resident message me today to tell me that their property was reassessed based on their input, which was good.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
Yeah.
With that, item number 12, notice of motions and resolution, we have an item, municipal democracy award system, Councilor Corey.
And so this, just from a process perspective, this is our first time that we've had this. All this is a notice that a motion will be brought forward, basically. So at the meeting in June, what will happen, is it'll come back with a CRF, and then the recommendation will be the motion that's on the floor. But if you remember what Barb was talking about when we had a session, at the Service Commission on kind of the meetings and procedure 101, this is the basically notice putting it on the table that it will be brought forward, in June, and we'll have some context or information related to it. There's no voting or deliberation even this evening. Yeah.
With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? You're all hesitating. Councilor Deputy Mayor Bannister, seconded by Councilor Dykstra, all in favor?
Aye.
No contrary minded? Motion carried.